Imagine this: February 1946. The most exclusive club in Manhattan. Six armed mobsters surround one black man sitting alone at a table reserved for bosses. Their hands move toward their weapons. One word from their leader, and he's dead. But instead of fear, Bumpy Johnson does something that will either make him the most powerful man in Harlem or the next body floating in the East River. What happens in the next 60 seconds will rewrite the rules of organized crime in America forever. This is the true story of the night when the king of the Italian Mafia sat across from the Prince of Harlem and discovered that respect isn't given, it's earned. By the time you finish this story, you'll understand why Lucky Luciano, the man who restructured the entire American Mafia, would later say that Bumpy Johnson was the most dangerous gangster he ever met. And it wasn't because of the bodies Bumpy buried. It was because of the war he prevented. February 1946. America is celebrating. World War II is over. The boys are coming home. But in the shadowy corners of New York City, a different kind of war is about to begin. Lucky Luciano, the man who turned the Mafia from a collection of warring street gangs into a corporate empire, has just walked out of Dannemora prison after 9 brutal years behind bars. But his freedom comes with strings attached. The United States government made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Use your connections on the Italian docks to help us win the war, and we'll commute your sentence. Luciano delivered. Allied ships moved safely through Italian ports. Intelligence flowed. The invasion of Sicily went smoother than anyone expected. But now the bill has come due, and it's stamped deportation to Italy. In less than 3 weeks, the feds are putting Luciano on a boat back to Sicily permanently. And Lucky Luciano doesn't leave loose ends. The 5 families are secured. Frank Costello is running things in his absence. Vito Genovese is scheming from exile. Albert Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner himself, controls the waterfront. Everything is buttoned up tight. Except for one glaring problem. The numbers racket, an illegal lottery that operates on street corners, in barber shops, in church basements, is printing money in Harlem. We're talking millions of dollars flowing through those streets every single week, and the Italian families want their cut. This isn't the first time they've tried. 11 years earlier, a hothead named Dutch Schultz bulldozed his way into Harlem with muscle and threats. Schultz was brutal, efficient, and absolutely convinced that fear was enough to control the numbers game. He squeezed, he threatened, he collected. And then one night in October 1935, Dutch Schultz walked into a tavern in Newark, New Jersey, and walked into a hail of bullets. They found him bleeding out in the bathroom, gut shot and dying. His last words were delusional rambling. His empire collapsed overnight. The man who orchestrated Schultz's downfall, a quiet, impeccably dressed enforcer named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. Now in 1946, Luciano wants what Schultz died trying to take. But Lucky Luciano didn't become the boss of bosses by being stupid. He learned from Schultz's mistake. You don't invade Harlem. You don't threaten. You don't demand. You negotiate. So Luciano sends word through the network. Tell Bumpy Johnson I want to meet. For 7 days, there's silence. 7 days where every mobster in New York holds their breath, wondering if the silence means war. 7 days where Luciano's men sharpen their knives and load their guns, just in case. And then on the 8th day, Bumpy sends a reply. Tell Mr. Luciano I'll be there. The location: the Stork Club on East 53rd Street, the most exclusive, glamorous nightclub in all of Manhattan. This is where Frank Sinatra croons, where J. Edgar Hoover drinks scotch in dark corners, where movie stars and politicians rub shoulders with gangsters in tuxedos. For this meeting, Luciano reserves the entire VIP room. No witnesses, no interruptions. Luciano arrives with an entourage that reads like a who's who of organized crime. Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the Underworld, acting boss of the Luciano family. Albert Anastasia, a man who's killed more people than he can remember and lost sleep over exactly none of them. Mayor Lansky, the accountant, the genius who figured out how to make crime corporate. And 3 bodyguards, each one a stone-cold killer. 7 men, 7 guns, 7 reputations built on blood. Then Bumpy Johnson walks in. Alone. He's 40 years old, but he looks 10 years younger. Navy blue 3-piece suit tailored to perfection. Crisp white shirt. No tie, he never wears ties. A gold watch chain hangs from his vest pocket, catching the light. His shoes are polished to a mirror shine. His hair is freshly cut, his face clean-shaven, and in his right hand he carries a leather briefcase. The bodyguards immediately move to intercept him. Hands reach for weapons. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. But Luciano raises a single finger. Let him through. Bumpy walks past the killers like they're furniture. His footsteps echo on the marble floor, confident, unhurried, almost casual. He surveys the room, taking in every face, every exit, every angle. And then he does something that makes every mobster in that room tense up. He pulls out the chair at the head of the table, the seat reserved for the boss, and sits down. Not across from Luciano, not at the side, at the head. The disrespect is breathtaking. Costello's jaw clenches. Anastasia's hand drifts toward his waistband. One of the bodyguards actually takes a step forward before Luciano stops him with a look. But Luciano just smiles. Because he understands exactly what Bumpy is doing. This isn't an insult. It's a statement. Before a single word is spoken, Bumpy Johnson has established the terms. This isn't a summons. This isn't a shakedown. This is a meeting between equals, or it's nothing at all. Bumpy places his briefcase on the table, pulls out a cigar, lights it, takes a long, slow drag, blows smoke toward the ceiling, and waits. Luciano takes the seat directly across from him, not at the head, which would challenge Bumpy's move, but across, which acknowledges it. Mr. Johnson, Luciano says, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Thank you for coming. Bumpy takes another drag. Mr. Luciano, you wanted to talk, so talk. Luciano folds his hands on the table. His voice is calm, measured, the tone of a man who's negotiated with senators and killers and knows the difference matters. I'm leaving the country in 3 weeks. The government's shipping me back to Italy. But before I go, I need to make certain New York stays stable. No wars, no chaos, just business. Bumpy nods, says nothing. Harlem is the final piece, Luciano continues. The numbers game up there is generating millions. My people want in, but I know you've been running things since Schultz's unfortunate accident. You've got the community's trust. You've got the infrastructure. You've got the police on your payroll. He pauses, locking eyes with Bumpy. I'm not here to take what's yours. I'm here to propose a partnership. You continue running Harlem. We provide protection, investment capital, political connections. In exchange, we take 40% of the profits. You maintain your independence, but under our umbrella, under our protection. The room goes silent. Costello leans forward, watching Bumpy's face for any reaction. Lansky's fingers drum softly on the table. Anastasia cracks his knuckles, a sound like breaking bones. Bumpy takes another drag from his cigar, lets the smoke curl. And if I decline? Luciano's smile doesn't waver, but his eyes turn to ice. Then we have a problem, Because if you're not with us, you're against us. And nobody survives being against us. It's not said with anger, not said with heat. It's said with the absolute certainty of a man who built an empire on that exact principle. Bumpy sets his cigar in the crystal ashtray. The sound of it touching down is like a gunshot in the silence. He opens his briefcase. Every man in that room tenses. Hands move toward weapons. Anastasia actually stands halfway out of his chair. But Bumpy doesn't pull out a gun. He pulls out a photograph. One photograph. He slides it across the table. Luciano picks it up. His face doesn't change. Years of poker have taught him that much. But his fingers tighten around the edges just slightly. The photograph shows a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn, one of Anastasia's gambling operations. And standing right there in the doorway, shaking hands with a police captain who's supposed to be investigating him, is Albert Anastasia himself. Taken 3 days ago, Bumpy says quietly. I have 12 more just like it, different warehouses, different cops, different members of your organization. The room goes deathly quiet. Costello's hand moves toward his jacket. Anastasia is fully standing now, his face flushed with rage. Lansky has gone pale, his brilliant mind already calculating the damage. But Luciano just stares at the photograph, then at Bumpy. Are you threatening me? Bumpy's voice is calm, almost gentle. No, I'm showing you respect. He leans forward. Because I could have sent these to the district attorney, could have sent them to the newspapers, could have burned your entire operation to the ground before you even knew I had them. He pauses. But I didn't. You came to Harlem asking for a partnership, Bumpy continues. But a partnership means equals, and what you just offered me wasn't a partnership. It was a takeover with a smile on its face. Luciano sets the photograph down carefully. For the first time since Bumpy entered the room, he looks genuinely impressed. So what do you want? Bumpy picks up his cigar, takes a slow drag, lets the question hang in the air like smoke. You want what Schultz wanted, what every Italian crew that's ever looked at Harlem wanted: control. He points toward the window, toward the lights of Uptown. But you can't have it, not because you're not smart enough, not because you're not strong enough, because Harlem isn't yours to control. He takes another drag. You know why Schultz failed? He thought black people were stupid, thought we'd just hand over our money and say thank you, thought muscle was enough. But Harlem doesn't work that way. You need trust. You need respect. You need to be one of us. He looks Luciano directly in the eyes. And you'll never be one of us. Costello starts to speak, but Luciano silences him with a single look. But here's what I will do, Bumpy continues. You asked for 40%, you can have 10. The number hangs in the air. 10% of the profits, not as protection money, as a service fee. You provide banking support. We need clean money to pay out when the big numbers hit. You provide legal help when our runners get arrested. In return, you get 10% of the net. He leans back. And one more thing. You never, and I mean never, send your people into Harlem to collect. You want your money, you send a courier to my office. I'll have it counted, wrapped, and ready. But your soldiers don't patrol my streets. Your guns don't show up in my neighborhood. His voice drops an octave. Harlem stays black. Harlem stays mine. That's the deal. The silence that follows is absolute. Mayor Lansky breaks it first. He turns to Luciano. Charlie, he says softly, using Luciano's real name. That's actually a brilliant play. 10% for essentially zero risk. No overhead, no exposure, it's clean money. Anastasia isn't convinced. And what stops him from cutting us out once we set up the banking? Bumpy answers before Luciano can. The same thing that stops you from trying to take Harlem by force. Mutually assured destruction. He gestures to the photograph. You try to cheat me, those photographs go public. Your political protection evaporates overnight. I try to cheat you. You come after me with everything you've got. He spreads his hands. We both lose or we both get rich, your choice. Lucky Luciano stares at Bumpy Johnson for what feels like an eternity. And then slowly he starts to laugh. Not a mocking laugh, a genuine one. The laugh of a man who's just been outmaneuvered and appreciates the artistry of it. You know what, Bumpy, Luciano says, still chuckling. Schultz was an idiot. He should have come to you with respect instead of guns. He stands up, extends his hand. 10%, banking and legal support, no soldiers in Harlem, and you deliver the money monthly. Bumpy stands, shakes his hand, one firm grip. We have a deal. Frank Costello exhales like he's been holding his breath for an hour. Mayor Lansky actually smiles. Even Anastasia sits back down, the tension bleeding out of his shoulders. Luciano holds onto Bumpy's hand for an extra second. Let me tell you something, Bumpy. I've done business with presidents, cops, union bosses, killers. But you're the first man who came to my table and told me no without pulling a gun. He pauses. That takes either guts or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet. Bumpy smiles, a rare, genuine smile. When you figure it out, let me know. 3 weeks later, Lucky Luciano boards a ship to Italy. He never sets foot on American soil again. But the deal he made with Bumpy Johnson, that holds for 22 years. The numbers racket flourishes. Bumpy pays the 10% like clockwork, never a day late. The Italians provide banking through legitimate fronts, washing the money clean. When Bumpy gets arrested in 1951 and sent to Alcatraz, Frank Costello personally ensures his family is taken care of, money for rent, food, lawyers. The deal holds. When Bumpy walks out of prison in 1963, 12 years later, the arrangement is still intact, still profitable, still peaceful. That meeting at the Stork Club becomes legend in organized crime circles. Not because of violence, not because of threats, but because two men from completely different worlds sat down and found a way to do business without destroying each other. Luciano would later tell associates in Italy, Bumpy Johnson was the smartest gangster I ever met, and the most dangerous, because he didn't need me to respect him. He demanded it. Bumpy never spoke publicly about the meeting, but people close to him said he kept that photograph of Anastasia in his office for the rest of his life. Not as a threat, as a reminder. Power isn't about who's willing to pull the trigger first. It's about who's smart enough not to. If this story of strategy, respect, and the negotiation that changed organized crime forever inspired you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Share this with someone who needs to understand that real power doesn't roar, it whispers. Drop a comment and tell me, if you were in that room sitting across from Lucky Luciano and his killers, what would you have done? Would you have taken the deal, fought, run? Keep fighting for your crown. I'll see you in the next one.